Welcome to EME 101, Elementary Concepts in Economics of Education, Study Session 1, Meaning, Scope, and History of Economics of Education. Introduction. In this study session, you will explore the history of economics of education. You will also differentiate between the concepts of economics and that of economics of education. You will as well examine the basic problems of economics of education and explore how these problems can be solved. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Discuss the concept of economics of education. 2. Identify the fundamental problem of economics of education. 3. List and explain limitations to education resources. 4. Present a brief history on economics of education. Meaning of economics of education. Now that you are preparing to manage education, you will be taking this course, and it is important that you familiarize yourself with key concepts in economics of education. You will start your study by looking at the following definitions: economics, education, economics of education, education economics. Defining economics. What do you think economics is? The study of money, wealth? You are not too far. Let us examine how others have defined economics. According to the Quality Assurance Agency for Higher Education, economics is the study of the factors that influence income, wealth, and well-being. Economics concerns itself with how society chooses to allocate its scarce resources among competing and conflicting alternatives so as to arrive at the most rational and desirable outcome. As you can see, economics is not just the study of how to spend money, rather, it deals with allocation of scarce resources, using appropriate criteria for the purpose of efficient production, which in turn leads to growth and development, and planning, financing, and costing of plans to ensure effective and efficient use of resources. Having understood the meaning of economics, let us now attempt to examine what the term education connotes. Defining education. Let us look at the following definitions for education. Education is any act or experience that has a formative effect on the mind, character, or physical ability of an individual. Nyerere 1982 presented that education is the transmission of accumulated wisdom and knowledge of the society from one generation to the next, so as to prepare young people for their future membership of the society in which they find themselves. Education thus refers to that form of learning which leads to the acquisition of knowledge, skills, and attributes, which enables one to adjust and contribute to the environment one finds himself. Education takes place in formal settings, such as the type received in schools. It also takes place in informal settings, such as a home, as well as the non-formal environment. Now that we have established the meaning of economics and education, how then do we describe the meaning of economics of education? This is our next focus. Defining economics of education. As you can see, there is no single definition for economics or education. So how can we attempt a definition of economics of education? Let us first examine how these terms apply to each other. In doing this, we will study the case study presented below. For the sake of this course, let's define economics of education as the study of how stakeholders in education make or approve choices within available but scarce resources in a bid to achieve best educational outcomes. Your definition was probably not very different from the one we gave you. The important thing is to keep in mind that economics of education applies economic principles and concepts to the process of education. Our focus in the next subsection is to examine what are the fundamental problems confronting the discipline called economics of education. The fundamental problems of economics of education. There are three decision makers or stakeholders in the educational system. These are the society, the institutions or providers, suppliers of education, and individuals or households, purchaser of educational services. The twin problem of scarcity and choice face these major stakeholders. The fundamental problem of the economics of education is how the society, institution, and the households make use of the limited human and material resources they have to best satisfy their unlimited wants for education. The solution to the fundamental problem requires the application of certain economic concepts which shall be dealt with in this course. Limitedness of education resources. Resources such as men, money, materials are limited in supply and serve as inputs in the educational system. These inputs include men, teachers, policymakers, non-teaching staff, materials, students, raw materials, teaching and research materials, teaching aids and other equipment, money, cash, check and banknotes, management, policies, plans, programs, timetable and educational laws, and time. One noticeable characteristic of resources in education is that they are not always enough. Knowing fully well that the education industry is a center for production of educated manpower, who are invariably injected into the economy of different nations. For example, there is 24 hours in a day, and as an undergraduate student in the Department of Educational Management, you are required to offer courses in Department of Teacher Education, Special Education, Guidance and Counseling, General Studies, plus courses in other faculties outside the Faculty of Education. Educational wants are unlimited. Hardwick, Kahn, and Langmed 1994 affirmed that individual wants are virtually unlimited, whilst the resources available to satisfy those wants are scarce. Educational wants create a demand for scarce resources, and this implies that wants are competing for the same resources. If the above happens, it is therefore rational to conclude that works that are most pressing will be satisfied first under direct competition. Really, it is not possible to satisfy all identified educational wants at the same time because educational resources are limited. To this end, decision makers will have to make choices among the alternative educational wants. Consequently, economics of education concerns itself with how to use the limited educational resources to satisfy the unlimited educational wants. Now that we have established the fact that educational wants are unlimited and that the resources needed for their satisfaction is scarce, we need to have an in-depth understanding of how economics education has evolved over time for us to appreciate these educational challenges. This will now take us to the analysis of history of economics education in our next discussion. History of economics of education. We have discussed the meaning of economics of education and examined how scarcity of resources limits educational resources. Let's now look at how economics of education began. Economics of education is known to be the study of how man and the society used to choose either with or without money, employ scarce productive resources in the production of different types of training, knowledge development, skills, mind, character, and behavior. This is done through formal schooling that can be provided within a stipulated time and at a given or designated venue. Economics of education has its own history, which is notable among the classical economists during the 18th and 19th century. The classicalists believe that education has great relevance, especially as a form of national investment, which will yield returns which can be pecuniary, monetary, or non-pecuniary, non-monetary. Economists are, more often than not, associated with ensuring that those profit-making companies and the overall economy functions well, but they have, however, slowly expanded their interests to new spheres of society. The foundation of the economics of education as a significant field within economics dates back to the theoretical and empirical developments that were made by American economists such as Gary Becker, Jacob Mensah, Mark Bloch, and even George Sakharopoulos, and so on in 1960s. Their works introduced the idea of education as human capital, and they attempted to calculate the economic returns to acquiring education. In fact, more than the past decade, there has been an enormous growth of interest by economists in issues such as education policy, financing of education, demand and supply of education, efficiency and productivity, both in the United Kingdom, America, and other parts of the world, and it has been accompanied by a growing political interest in market-based reforms across the public sector. These types of reforms include devolvement of financial planning to frontline institutions such as hospitals and schools, and giving consumers of public services choice about which provider to use. Economists from other fields such as labor economics have been attracted by the growing availability of large-scale datasets that facilitate complex statistical analysis to analyze the impact of particular policy initiatives. Examples of this data include that of the National Pupil Database as it exists in England. Such database has been collected to make available information annually on variables like the background characteristics and key stage attainment data of all pupils in state-maintained schools. Study session summary. In this study session, you defined economics of education as a branch of economics which uses economic tools to solve educational problems. You also explored the fundamental problem of economics of education. Finally, you identified the basic problems of economics of education and explored how the problems can be solved. End of study session 1. Thanks for listening.